the Kellogg Center on the campus of Michigan State University. We are going to be making some appetizers and other good goodies this morning, and then we will re-show this tonight from 9 p.m. to 10 p.m. This is part of our countdown to closeout event, and this is our cooking demonstration. So I am now going to turn it over to what we affectionately call him as Chef Jason. So Chef Jason.
Good morning, everybody, or good afternoon, or good evening, depending on what time you're viewing this. Today we're going to be making two items. So we're going to be making a mocha tres leche. Tres leche roughly translates into 3 milks. It's kind of a Mexican standard dessert. And then we're also going to be making some loaded corn fritters. A nice appetizer that's great for hanging out with friends, and pretty simple to make. The cake's a little bit more intense. I'm going to talk about kind of a cheat that I came up with that might work for folks. But we're going to make a scratch cake and then talk about the cheat as we're going through it. And then the fritters, real basic. It's basically like hush puppies if you've ever made something like that, except for we do them in a pan fry versus doing them in a deep fryer. So starting with the cake, we've got eggs. You have to separate your eggs for making this cake. So it's a traditional sponge cake. So you got egg yolk, and then granulated white sugar. So we're going to raise the basket on this. We're going to turn it on to a high speed, and then begin adding the sugar. Oops. Got a little firm sitting there. There we go. When you're whipping this sugar, if you have an electric mixer like this, sometimes the basket will drop a little bit. You want to make sure that that whisk is getting all the way to the bottom of the bowl. And when you're doing this, you want to whip these egg yolks until they're thick and pale yellow. You want to make sure that the sugar is completely dissolved in it because you don't want any of that coarse granule. It takes about 3 or 4 minutes. We're going to let that one ride while we get started on the egg whites. Egg whites, similar process. We'll raise the basket on the bowl. Egg whites are actually better to whip when they're closer to room temperature. They hold their air better and stay more stable. So we're going to get those started. Again, a high speed on those. If you don't have a KitchenAid or stand mixer like this, you can use a handheld mixer. We do a little 2-prong handheld mixers. You can also do it by hand in a mixing bowl with a whisk. You're going to be tired. You know, for this size cake, it's taking 10 eggs. We're making a pretty good size cake. It'll feed 15, 20 people. You can half that recipe and save yourself a little bit of work. The cheat that I was talking about, I went to the grocery store and grabbed a Pillsbury vanilla cake mix, and we'll do a little comparison later on where I just took that cake mix, did the same thing with the eggs and the remaining ingredients, and came out with a pretty reasonable cake. Alright. So for the sake of television, we'll show you what that looks like. And you see it's thick and it's got that very pale yellow, and you can see that it's all very well incorporated. So we're going to take that off. We'll set that to the side. Now, our egg whites have reached kind of a foam stage, and when they get to this point, that's when we're going to start adding the sugar for the egg whites. If you just dumped it in there right at the beginning, they wouldn't rise the way that you want them to. And you can't just dump it all in at the same time either. This sugar, I left the sugar sitting out a little while this morning, and it's all kind of crusted over. But we'll make it work. When you're adding the sugar, by little so that it has time to incorporate, dissolve, and it creates kind of a sheen on the egg white. What we're looking for on those egg whites is what's called firm peaks. We want them to stand up and hold their air because that's what's going to give the lift to this cake. That's what's going to give it the cellular structure that we're looking for. We want this cake to have a lot of air holes in it because we're going to be pouring a milk mixture over the top of it that's going to soak into the cake overnight. Best way to check for those peaks, just get a big scoop of that, and you'll be perfect right there. If that stands up like that, that's what you're looking for. Alright. So now we assemble the cake. We're going to add some more items to the egg yolk mixture. So we have vanilla extract. You know, when you go to the grocery store, you can get vanilla flavoring or vanilla extract. Spend the extra $1, get the extract. Vanilla flavoring doesn't give you the same quality. We'll let that whisk in real quick. Then we have evaporated milk, which is basically like a, well, like the name says, evaporated. A lot of the moisture has been cooked out of the milk. Add that in. Whisk that in real quick. And then we've got some dry ingredients. So this is cocoa powder. This is a super dark cocoa powder. But you can use any cocoa powder that you get at the grocery store, Hershey's brand or whatever you come across. We got baking powder. So baking powder versus baking soda. Baking powder is used in cakes because it's got a stabilizer in it, typically cornstarch, which allows the air to stay up, whereas baking soda is typically used in cookies because it's a fast rise, but then it falls, it doesn't hold. And this is all-purpose flour. You can use cake flour, but it's going to provide a little bit softer texture, and you won't get the strength out of the cake that you need for the milk to soak into it. And then we have just a little salt. We're going to put this on a lower speed. Just work it until it's incorporated. Take a rubber spatula, scrape down the sides of the bowl. You want to make sure that you got everything incorporated. Get down into the bottom. Alright, so now throw some coffee in there. We're using instant coffee granules or crystals because we want that strong coffee flavor. But we can't add liquid to this or we won't get the texture that we want. So that is the only time you will ever see me using that product is for desserts, pastries, ice cream, that sort of thing, because it gives you the flavor that you want without the negative effects. Science.
What are the negative effects?
Well, too much hydration is just going to make a soft dough. So
Okay. I
could replace the evaporated milk with a little bit of coffee, but it doesn't have the same consistency or viscosity, so it's going to change the texture of the cake. Alright, so we got section A, section B. Now we're going to fold these whites into this. You want to do it in batches. The reason for that is if you just put it all in there, you're going to have to work it a lot to try to get it incorporated, and you'll lose a lot of the air. When you're folding it in there, you don't want to just go at it real hard like that. You just want to keep turning it over on top of itself. It'll look about something like that.
So we got one more third to go.
Doesn't that look delicious, Spartans? Look at that.
So you can see how those egg whites have really changed the texture of that batter. It made it real soft and fluffy. And it looks almost like a chocolate mousse or a chocolate pudding. All right. You want to make sure you don't have any streaks of white in there. Okay, now time for the bacon. So this is about a 12-13 inch pan. You can use whatever baking pan you have, but you want it to be a shallow pan. It can be square, it can be rectangle, it can be round. You just don't want to bake in a deep pan or like a bread loaf pan or a bundt pan or anything like that, because one, it'll take a long time to bake and you'll end up with a very hard exterior, you know, maybe even underdone center. You also want the surface area, because when we soak this cake, you want to be able to get a lot of contact with it. So what you're looking for in the end is about a 2 to 3 inch cake. If you have to separate that into multiple pans based on the size of your cake batch, then go ahead and do that. Alright, home, this is the point where I'd start licking the bowl and this, but I'm not allowed to do that, so I'll save that for Miss Coles. Alright, so we're ready to go. Just want to give it a little tap. Don't go crazy with it or anything, but just get it to settle. And then this is going to go into the oven for, we're baking in convection ovens, which are forced air ovens on a low fan. At home, you're probably going to be baking in a conventional oven, which likely won't have a fan. You want to set your temperature at 350 degrees. Bake it for about 35 to 40 minutes. Check the texture of it. You can push on the top. If it springs back, it's done, or you can poke it with a toothpick. Don't overbake it. Cake is kind of like a roasted piece of meat. It continues to bake a little bit as it comes out of the oven. So let it rest and it'll be fine. So I'm going to go pop this in the oven and be right back.
That was fabulous, Spartans. That cake looks delicious, and when it gets done, I think we'll have a pretty good product. So hope everybody is doing well. That was our first demonstration, but we have another one that we're going to do. And so I will let Chef Jason introduce that one.
Okay.
So this is our next one.
Well, we're going to do the syrup that goes over the top of it, or the milk. But this is the tres leche part of it. So
This is the second part of the cake.
yeah, so this is what's going to be the soap that goes on top of the cake. So we've got a variety of ingredients over here as well. The first two things we're going to start with are sour cream and heavy whipping cream. If we had crema, that would be these two things combined. So you can buy convenience crema at most Mexican markets, Latin American markets. It's got kind of the same consistency as whipped cream, a little thicker, but it's a little sour in flavor, and that's where we're trying to get this combination. When you mix these, you want to mix these two at the beginning so that the sour cream doesn't leave little granules.
Look how neat this counter is for Dishes. Fabulous.
Should have been here yesterday when I was prepping. It wasn't quite so neat. So just mix those two together. So that sour cream's broken up. That should do it right there. And then we're gonna add evaporated milk, or sweetened condensed milk. So this is the second of the two milks. Consider this number one, this is two. This is very, very sweet. It's almost like caramel, it's so sweet. And it gets a lot of it. That in. That helps break down that sour cream a little bit more. Alright, so back to our coffee crystals. I'm going to throw some of those in there. These take a little while to dissolve because this is a room temperature or a cold product. That's okay because you've got the entire time that the cake is baking and the entire time that the cake is cooling. So you've got a 2-3 hour window where this can just sit, wrap the plastic in your refrigerator, and it'll be fine. And the last thing we're going to add to that is more evaporated milk. Quite a bit of that as well. So this is going to be a fairly loose consistency, and I promise you it's going to look like a lot when we pour it onto the top of this cake. But it'll soak up about probably 80% of it, and it'll leave a little bit around the edge as it sits. But that's okay, because when you serve it, people will want that milk to go with their dessert. All right, so we're gonna let that rest over here, and then we're gonna move on to our corn fritters. So we gotta change positions real quick, and then we'll get at it with that.
But first, Spartans, I want you to see this fabulous chef outfit that Chef Jason has on. He has got a green Spartan chef outfit. So, I'm sorry, uniform, not outfit, uniform.
Oh, it's my outfit.
It's your outfit for the day?
fashionable.
Okay, so I'm going to follow Chef Jason over to the next station so we can make our other item.
All right, let's do it.
All right, let's do it.
Okay, so we've got two things going on the counter. We've got a sauce that we're working on here for the corn fritters, and then the ingredients for the corn fritters, and then some garnish that goes on at the end. So, pretty basic recipe. You've got all-purpose flour, yellow cornmeal. You can use white cornmeal. You can use masa harina, which is ground corn that's mixed with lye. We got baking powder, baking soda, salt, and black pepper, and then a little bit of sugar. Mix that through. You can put this through a sifter if you want to, but not completely necessary. Just make sure there's no big chunks in there. Look for the bits of baking soda too. Want to make sure that none of those are holes. If you ever bite into a little bit of baking soda, it's kind of very metallic flavor. So a couple of eggs. Crack your eggs, just don't smash them. You know, a lot of people have to use 2 hands, or you can just pinch them like that. If you're doing a big batch of these, I would recommend that you do your eggs in a separate container so that you're cracking them. You don't get shells in your finished product. So if you're doing a dozen eggs, 20 eggs, whatever it might be, do it in a separate container because your shells will generally just fall to the bottom. You don't have to fight to pick them out. But a couple of them, if you have to get a little piece in there, you can just reach in and grab it. Just give that a little stir just to break those eggs up. And then we're going to add buttermilk to that. stir that through till everything's moist. Alright, so you got a nice soft dough there. It's going to firm up a little bit just because that cornmeal is still thirsty and it's going to try to drink some of that. But we're adding other components to it. They're going to kind of balance that out. Because right now it's at a really good texture. Diced red peppers, you can use green peppers, you can use whatever you want. You don't even have to have anything in there. I mean, aside from this corn, you can stop right there if you want. Put jalapenos in there. Basically, the sky's the limit. I like the texture and the flavor of the sweet bell peppers, so we're going to use that. Then we get a little diced onion as well. You can use red onion, green onion, shallots. It's open to interpretation. These are a great little party food, so if you're just hanging out having like a New Year's Eve celebration with a couple of friends, or having a Super Bowl party or something like that down the road, or whatever you might be celebrating. These are real simple to make. Nice thing about them is you can actually make this batter a day ahead of time, leave it in the cooler, and then just use it as you need it. You might have to add a little more flour to get it to back to the consistency that you're looking for. You can also par fry these if you want, so you can just kind of sear them a little bit in the oil and then put them on a cookie sheet and then hold them room temperature until you need them, and then you can just finish them in the oven. It takes about 4 or 5 minutes at 400 degrees in the oven. And we're going to be cooking these in a cast iron skillet today. Come on around this way. Cast iron skillet. I don't know how many of you have one of these at home, but they're a great piece of equipment. They're very versatile. You can deep fry in them, pan fry. When I was growing up, we always made fried chicken in these because it's got the best distribution of heat. It's nice and even. Whereas these pans are made from aluminum. They push a lot of heat very quickly, but they don't really hold the heat very well, so you don't have stable heat.
So Chef Jason, if you're starting out and you don't have a whole lot of money, what kinds of products would you say buy as far as pans or cooking utensils?
Well, I mean, a good cast iron skillet will set you back about $25. You can get smaller ones for less, but the best thing about that is it's easy to use, it's easy to clean, it's durable, it'll last your lifetime if you take care of it. They don't scratch like the Teflon coated pans. You can scrub at them with a stainless steel scrubby. That's really all you need to clean them is hot water and a stainless steel scrubby. You dry them off with heat by putting them on the stove or putting them in the oven. And then you put a little oil on them and just let them sit on the counter or put them in the cabinet. You can take them camping, you can cook over an open flame outside with them if you want to. So you can bake in them, you can fry in them. You get a deep one like a Dutch oven, you can boil in it if you have to. So as far as like utensils around the kitchen, I mean, you need a decent spatula, decent knife, and a decent set of tongs. I think you can get just about anything done with those three.
Good, thank you.
Alright, so we're letting this heat up a little bit. We don't want it to be crazy hot. We're going to add the oil. Now the amount of oil you use is determined by the size of the pan in some ways, because you don't want it deep. You just want a small layer of oil so that it can shallow fry. So we're going to let that heat up until we start to see what we call the shimmer. The oil will start to move in the pan and you can see it kind of shimmering. When it reaches that stage, we'll start adding the batter to it. Waiting on that oil to heat up. We're going to go ahead and make our sauce. We're calling this an aioli. Traditionally, if you were making an aioli, you would actually use egg yolk, oil, lemon juice, or some sort of citrus, or some sort of acid like white vinegar or something like that. And you would just keep whisking it. We're cheating. We're using mayonnaise. If you're going to use mayonnaise, use a good quality mayonnaise. Don't go to the store and get the clear jar that just says mayo on the side of it. I'm not endorsed nor sponsored by Hellmann's, but I swear by Hellmann's. So there you go. Yeah. There are other good brands out there as well. Duke is a good brand. Even Kraft does a decent job. Alright, so what we have here is an ahi chili paste. I like this because it's got a nice balanced heat. It's not aggressive. It doesn't have an overwhelming flavor, but you can put sambal leek, or you can put sriracha, or French red hot, or any other hot sauce that you like in this sauce, have the same effect. Just looking for something that's got a little bit of spice to it. And we have granulated garlic. When you go to the grocery store and you see garlic powder, granulated garlic, buy the granulated garlic. It's got better flavor, and it also dissolves better in your food. Garlic powder has this tendency to clump, whereas this does not. And then we got ground cumin. If you're ambitious, you can buy cumin seed, toast it, grind it yourself. We don't do a lot of that in the kitchen around here because we're generally cooking for hundreds, if not thousands. So we're going to mix those ingredients real quick. And then we're going to add lime juice. Always recommend fresh lime juice, not that hard to juice a lime. And it tastes way better than like those little plastic squeeze ones that you buy at the grocery store. Probably cheaper too. And then we have olive oil. If you were making a big batch of this, I'd recommend have somebody hold this for you, or put a towel underneath of it so that it doesn't spin on you, so that when you're doing that, you can add that oil a little bit at a time, otherwise it'll break the mayonnaise. But that little bit right there is about 2 tablespoons. No worries. Alright, so that's the sauce. Our oil is nice and hot by now. It's definitely looking good. So we're just going to make some little fritters to put in there. Just going to push those down, and then just flatten them out a little bit. These don't take too long to cook either. They're just a few minutes each side. You can make them bigger, you can make them smaller. If you have a little fry daddy, like a countertop fryer or something like that at home, you can use one of those. And then you can just do round scoops or whatever you want. Totally up to the user. If you are doing them in a shallow fry like this, make sure that you keep a little space in between them. You don't want to crowd them. They'll cook together and you'll just have one giant fritter at that point. Asking about what utensils. So if you're going to buy a utensil, make sure that it's got some resilience. It's not just going to fall apart in the kitchen. We buy a lot of these wood-handled ones, but they also make heat-resistant handles now they'll withstand heat up to like 600-700 degrees. And a lot of times when you're in the kitchen, you can set something on the edge like that. If you got one of those plastic handles, it'll melt. These wood ones will actually catch on fire. Something like that. Again, this is an optional item, not something that you have to use. I pre-cooked this earlier. We're just going to rewarm it now. If you want to keep it vegetarian, by all means, do that. We're going to flip these back over so they can finish cooking. For this if you want. I've already dirtied this, so I might as well use it. You can be as creative with this process as you like. You want to put it in a little squeeze bottle, or you just want to, like put it on the end, or if you're serving this for a bunch of people and you just want to put all this into a bowl and let them spoon it out and dip it for themselves, you can do that. We're pretending like we're going to be serving these to somebody, okay? Take them out of the pan, have a plate or a bowl or something like that with a clean paper towel. You can use a kitchen towel as well, but make sure it's something that's been very clean and doesn't have any like detergent flavors or that aroma from a dryer sheet. You don't want that on your food. You want to bring them out. Let that oil soak into that towel a little bit. Sure if they're done, there's a foolproof way. Just break one in half and make sure that it's not doughy in the center. See how that's got it's cooked, it's soft, but it's not still showing that raw egg sort of texture to it. Or you can still use that one. Alright, so you got some friends coming over, you want to have a little table party or something like that. Get some extra on, no problem. You can serve it just like that if you want, or if you want to embellish it a little bit. We talked about that chorizo. You see that's nice and hot again. You can put it right across the top, or you can put a little bit on the end and you kind of let the user decide what they want to do with it. This is cotija cheese, which is kind of a Mexican farm cheese. If you've ever heard of the dish elote, which is Mexican street corn, this is what they use on that. Put that right across the top. If you don't like it there, put it on the end. You let them pick. And then we've got a little bit of cilantro that goes with that as well. And again, everything is optional. Totally up to the user. Myself, I would have all of the items. That'd be my plate, right there. All right, so we got loaded corn fritters with the ahi aioli, it's cotija cheese, and then we're moving back over to our cake section now. The cake that we popped in the oven is probably still 25 minutes away from being done, but through the magic of television, we have one that we had prepped.
Spartans, look at that. Look at that.
All right, so earlier we were talking about that cheat, right? You know, we bought a cake mix, we whipped the egg whites, we whipped the egg and the sugar, we put just a little bit of sugar in it because the cake mix already has its own sugar. We added the cocoa, we added the coffee crystals, And this was a vanilla Pillsbury brand cake. You could use Betty Crocker, it doesn't matter, whichever one. And then we poured the liquid over it. Now when I filled this with that syrup, this one that we made here, when I filled that yesterday, it was about 2 o'clock in the afternoon. This thing was nearly covered. The only thing that wasn't is the center of it, and I had to hollow this out because when this was baking, it domed up, and I didn't want that dome, so I just took it and cut it off, and to be honest, ate about half of it. But I soaked this overnight, and I also soaked this one. Now this is the one with the cake that we made from scratch. Side by side, there's a visual difference. This one's a little darker. This one's got a little lighter color to it. Texture-wise, almost even Steven. Okay, so both of them were very firm cakes, and after they soaked, they had about the same texture to them, and they had about the same amount of leftover liquid in them by comparison. So I went ahead and made this one look all pretty, but I can promise you that if you have a group of friends over and you come strolling out of the kitchen with a cake, especially this cake, they're not going to care if you took the time to pipe all this on there. So this is whipped cream. It's cream, sugar, and vanilla. The one that's over here that's dark, it's got a little bit of that coffee crystal in it, and it's got cocoa in it. Totally up to you. Traditionally, this would be a vanilla cake. It wouldn't have any of this chocolate or coffee or anything like that in it. And it would just be straight whipped cream with a little bit of vanilla and sugar in it, like what we see right here. So we're marrying the two. As far as putting it on there, you can throw it at it if you want to. It's totally up to you. But
Does that not look delicious, Spartans?
all right. Now, when you get the cream on there, you can garnish it if you want. You can put a little, cocoa powder or some shaved chocolate. Cinnamon if you want that flavor in there. It's your cake. You can do what you want with it. But most important thing is that you eat it. We're gonna cut one right now.
And look at that, Spartans. We're gonna cut the cake.
All right, so we'll go for this one right here. There you go.
Look at that, Spartans. Is that not fabulous?
So we're gonna try to show you by getting up close with this. If you squeeze this, you can see that it's got that milk in it, okay? But the cake isn't mushy. It's a firm enough cake that it still holds its texture and has a nice soft bite to it. So it's kind of like a pudding cake in a way. Just for comparison, we're gonna go ahead and cut this one too. Just so, for any of you who are concerned, just so you know, none of this is going to go to waste because there's an entire team of people here that have just been waiting
for this.
So, come on over here. You can see right here in the bottom of this pan, there's still some of that syrup. Okay? Now this pan was full all the way around, all the way up to the top of this cake. So there's a good inch and a quarter of that milk all the way around it. And it soaked every bit of that up. This one's a little more challenging to get out, but there we go.
Oh my God, Spartans. Look at that.
All right, so there you go. The mocha tres leche. If you don't want to have it with cocoa and coffee in it, very simple just to eliminate those things and just have a regular vanilla cake. It's going to be delicious either way. So, thank you. On behalf of Michigan State University, I say go green.
Go white. Chef Jason, this has been a fabulous cooking demonstration, and thank you so much for giving your time. Spartans, all of this information as far as the ingredients are on the Student Life website. So impress your friends, impress your family, the social distance, wear your mask, and keep on cooking. Have a fabulous day. Want to also remind you that tonight at 9 o'clock we'll replay this cooking demonstration, and then we'll close out, count down the closeout with our Spartan Sensational Saturday Day Dance, and that's from 4 to 6 tomorrow via Facebook Live as well as live streams with Impact Radio. Have a fabulous day, Spartans. Go green!
Go white!